Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to be presenting part 2 of our webinar series, Increasing Stakeholder Engagement with BIM. My name is Maggie Caesar. I'm the event manager here at eBuilder. I'm joined by my colleague, Richard Kramer, who is the marketing systems and research manager here at eBuilder.
Good afternoon, everybody.
All right. I want to go over a few housekeeping items before we get started. We welcome your questions. If you have any questions, please use the chat window in your GoToWebinar control panel. We will be waiting till the end to answer the questions, but feel free to type them as they come to you throughout the webinar. If you run into any technical difficulties throughout the webinar, you can shoot me an email. I'll try to help you out at any time throughout the webinar today. And we will be sending out the recording and slides from today's presentation. We'll email them directly to you by Monday. All right, so I'd like to introduce Russ Treadway. Russ Treadway is a member of the eBuilder product management team focused on BIM. He has over 20 years of experience in the software industry, which has included developing both enterprise and software as a service applications. He's been working with BIM applications in the AEC industry for the past 6 years and holds a certificate of management in building information modeling from the AGC. So now I'd like to turn it over to you, Russ.
Thanks, Maggie. Just getting started here. If you didn't get a chance to check out Tony's part 1 presentation in this series, there's a recording on the website and you can refer back to that later. I'm going to kind of take off from where Tony left off and go through the actual utilization of the BIM module inside of eBuilder to kind of show you the themes that Tony was talking about in the last session. Just to kind of recap, to get everybody up to speed, essentially some of the conclusions out of the data that we've been looking at recently keys in very clearly on how do we get our stakeholders to participate earlier and more often in the process, and how do we utilize BIM to include them more in that process. And one of the biggest challenges identified really was the training investment involved as far as getting folks involved in BIM and lack of skilled users. So as part of the session today, really we're going to try to show eBuilder and how all members of the project team can access the model and interact with it. So just kind of set the tone, really, when we're talking about engaging stakeholders, we're talking about, if it's a, medical facility dealing with, nurses and doctors and staff and basically getting their input on, how their spaces are going to work best for them, and presenting them with, complex 2D drawings basically is going to be very difficult for a non-construction person to basically be able to interpret what's going on in those diagrams, whether it's maintenance folks or the staff at university. They're obviously not going to be familiar with reading the complex diagrams. So the idea is to make that more accessible by giving them more clear information, a better picture, obviously, and not just a picture, but being able to navigate through the model and obviously the visualization benefits that BIM provides. So for the live portion of the presentation, really we're going to take you through how you can navigate through the model, making it accessible to the whole project team, and not only the visibility, but how you take the data that you see and use that as kind of your communication tool to pass the information along to other members or other stakeholders, other members of the project team to communicate, what issues may be or questions about it or that sort of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into eBuilder here. For those that aren't familiar with eBuilder or just starting to learn, there's obviously several different modules depending on what you're working on and what your particular role or function is on the project, whether it's from planning or managing processes or schedules or tracking equipment and submittals and bidding processes. For today, we're really just going to focus on a couple of the modules. First and foremost, obviously, the BIM module, but we're also going to show a little bit about how the models get into the system, as well as how we link BIM data to other parts of the product. So just to get started, kind of the question of how do we get the models into the system, I guess, is first and foremost. And really, we treat models just like any other document. So as far as adding documents into the system, really it's just kind of a drag and drop operation. Just grab your model file. I'm going to use an IFC file as an example here. Drag and drop that in. It goes ahead through the upload process. If you have any additional custom fields you want to add, you can go ahead and specify those as well as part of the upload process to categorize things. But really, whether it's we support file formats from AutoCAD MEP, architecture, as well as Revit, and for any other platforms out there, basically we'll support those through IFC files, so you can export from those other platforms to IFC and import those into the system. So really, it's as simple as adding the files into the Documents module to add your models into the system. On the server, kind of where the magic happens, we extract all the information, all the geometry from the model, place that into our database so that we can then use that for viewing later. So the next step of the process really is defining what you want to go ahead and look at. And for us, we call those model sets. And really, a model set is just a way of grouping the models together. So if you have, for our example today, if you've got some architectural pieces, you got some piping, you got some equipment, some electrical, some duct, how do we take all those files from our different contributors, whether it's an architect dealing with their engineers or a contractor dealing with their subcontractors, how do we gather up all of those models, bring those together into a set so that we can then view those in the model viewer. So in our case, we can go ahead and just click Open in Viewer, and I've already done that here to launch the model viewer. Just to give you a little bit of the layout, across the top we have sort of the toolbar that helps with our navigation. Over on the right-hand side, we've got kind of our information pane with all the models that are input are part of the model set we have here. We'll talk about viewing the properties as we go through the presentation. And down at the bottom here, we have our saved viewpoints, and we'll talk about that a little bit as well. So just as kind of a getting started, how would a novice user or even an advanced user in CAD be able to get around the model and have it accessible to them? We have a series of tools up here, such as the Orbit tool. All these tools work basically the same. You click on Orbit, and you'll see the cursor change, and then at that point, your left mouse button becomes your tool. So if you press and hold and drag your mouse around, that's going to orbit you around the building. Again, if we look and pan and walk, basically kind of similar situations. There's several different options as far as zooming. If you want to zoom into a particular sort of close-up area, you can draw a window around it. Also, the middle mouse button will zoom you in and out to make things a little bit easier. So the walk tool will allow you to walk forwards and backwards. We can use the pan tool to move us up and down in the scene. And the look tool is basically going to, as if the camera were at our position, let us look up and down and around from the point that we're actually positioned at. So again, sort of very simple tools to allow a new user to be able to get in, navigate around, see what's going on, and have it available in the system. If you're an advanced CAD user and familiar with similar controls in, say, Navisworks or Revit or AutoCAD, keyboard shortcuts are available as well, so we can do all those same functions just through keyboard and mouse shortcuts, just as I did there. From a visibility standpoint, if I want to go ahead and hide anything, I can go ahead and select those objects, use hide to go ahead and hide those out of the way, or I can override the transparency and let me, view through the objects depending on what you're looking for and what you're after. You can obviously toggle the visibility controls to make your life easier to be able to locate the information that you're looking for, and that's kind of what it's all about. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here to our equipment room, and I'll go ahead and show all to bring the walls back that I had hidden. Let's say, for example, I've got maybe a design change that we're talking about. Maybe we're looking at changing out a particular piece of equipment. Maybe it's, this water heater here. Over here on the right-hand panel, you can see in the Properties pane, we've got all the data related to that particular object. So in this case, this model originally originated out of Revit, and you can see some of the Revit-specific properties there. So the data-rich information that you input into your model is going to be all that information, all that metadata associated with those objects, we're going to be able to pull into our viewer as well. So not just the geometry, of course, that's nice for the visualization, but also all the data that's associated with it. So the more data-rich information that you've got in the authored model, whether that's coming out of the AutoCAD platforms I talked about earlier, or out of Revit, or even IFC, all that information will flow through to inside of eBuilder, inside the model viewer. So let's say, just as an example, for a case here, maybe we're switching out this Bradford water heater that's 100 gallons. Maybe we need a larger capacity, or maybe we want to go with a different manufacturer for some reason. In the case of how we would handle that as far as a process or a form inside of eBuilder, basically we would come in and first start off with saving a viewpoint of the area that we have our question about. So we've navigated around and used all the tools. You can use the hiding tools and transparency tools and whatever other tools you need to basically get a good idea or a good picture of the area that you're working on. And you just go ahead and click the Save button. Save button just pops up a dialog here for saving what your viewpoint is going to be called. So I'm just going to call it, Water Heater 1, something creative. You can give it a description and more details, and you can choose where it's going to be saved inside of the Documents module. And essentially, we've got our viewpoint saved. Now, a viewpoint is kind of two pieces. Really, it's a 2D screenshot first, but it's a 2D screenshot that also has, think of it as a shortcut to 3D space. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom out, back to my sort of default view. I can click on any of these viewpoints, and it's going to take me to the exact position in 3D space of where that was taken from. So it is the 2D file that's actually stored, the JPEG you can see there, but it's also really a shortcut to the 3D space so that you can investigate that issue further. So talking about my design review process, I want to go ahead and include my new viewpoint into that process. So over on the right-hand menu, we've got a couple of different options, kind of shortcuts, if you will, for being able to fill out a form or start a process. Again, viewpoints can be attached to any basically item that you could normally attach a file to inside of eBuilder. So if you wanted to, associate a viewpoint with your issues or even something scheduling related or bidding or submittals, you can go ahead and associate the viewpoints there as well. I'm going to go ahead and use the shortcut here to kick off a form. Now this will come up with a list of any of the forms that you've filled out in your inside of eBuilder. It's very customizable as far as eBuilder is concerned. You can define whatever you want on your forms. It's very customizable. So in this case, I've just got a simple form. We're going to say, when my issue is due, fill out a description. And, this particular form has some information about, discipline and so on and so forth. You can go ahead and fill it out as you see fit, but obviously this is all customizable. And again, we've got our water heater saved viewpoint that we're going to post along with our form. So I click Post Form. I'm going to go and jump over to the document or the Forms module here, and this would show up on my dashboard if it was assigned to me, or I could go ahead and jump over here into Forms, and you'll see, if I'm let's say I'm kind of changing hats here, and I'm now the person that's responsible for reviewing this form that's been submitted. I would come in here and see that I've got a new item that's been assigned to me. Or that I'm involved in and that I'm asked to review. I can go ahead and jump over to Attach Viewpoints. And if you're familiar with the Documents module already inside of eBuilder, you'll be a little bit familiar with this. You can see properties, download, adding red lines, removing it are typical for what you would see for regular files. For viewpoints that have been associated, however, we have one extra option in here, which is Open in Viewer. So, if I'm a regular user, a 2D screenshot might be good to understand what's going on, but obviously being able to see something in 3D space is very helpful as well. Once you've seen, a mechanical system on, one floor of your 10-story building, they all become looking very similar, of course. So without a long narrative from the user to explain what the issue is or where it is in the building or what floor it's located on, essentially that is all shortcutted by knowing essentially what model set the viewpoint was created from, so we can jump right to the floor or right to the set of models that's important. We can also choose, the model loads and basically gets us right to the position. We don't have to navigate around to understand where we're at in the model. We can just get to the information at hand here, essentially, what the question was about. So in this case, we're proposing to change out the water heater. Maybe we orbit around the water heater, basically see what kind of clearance am I going to have. Are there other pieces of equipment that are going to have to move? What are the ramifications of changing this out for? Maybe the new model that we're suggesting to change it out for has a wider diameter, or maybe is 2 feet taller. Are we going to have the clearance? Are we going to have to do a lot of rework in the piping? That sort of thing. And in any event, if I have the viewer, I can navigate around, understand the context of what's going on in that particular area, and very quickly be able to understand the situation and what we've got going on in that area. That's kind of a quick run through one, of course, being able to have the model accessible to the whole project team to basically be able to review issues, navigate through it with kind of a simple series of tools. And the other idea is obviously how do we then take that visualization and the power that we have with BIM and the properties as well as the visualization and link that to what our other business processes. At the core of eBuilder obviously is a very powerful process engine for managing all of your business processes related to construction. BIM, in that respect, is really just another process. We continue on with the processes that you have in place. We're just adding on, obviously the layer of understanding and visibility that you get out of BIM that you can't otherwise get out of, a 2D screenshot or, a long list of text, pictures, 1,000 words. Being able to jump around in the model, navigate around, and understand the context of that picture is worth millions. So at that point, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the presentation and open it up for questions if you have any. Be happy to answer any of those questions.
Thanks very much, Russ. We have had quite a few questions come in, so thank you to the audience. Please keep those questions coming in. And so let's get to them. We've had a couple that are similar, so I'm going to, I might try to group them. If your question, if we don't get to it just because of time, we'll definitely be following up with you afterwards. So let's see, first question. This is interesting, Russ. Given that you're essentially shortcutting the process by using these viewpoints, how would you go about still reporting on, let's say RFIs by floor or by discipline or by that kind of thing?
Well, I think that kind of goes into how you've set up your forms or the processes that you've included. So obviously, if you've included, whether it's a series of checkboxes or data points to categorize that data. So in my example, you might include, an area or a floor into your form to capture that additional data, or potentially even, custom properties on the viewpoints themselves. Obviously, each file can be tagged with additional data too. And that's all customizable as well. So there's a couple different ways to kind of categorize that and group that together that I think would come out through the reporting. But basically, it comes down to categorizing the data based upon the form that you capture it. So just like you would, if you're, the way I like to think about it is if I were doing this on paper, how would I do the same thing? And still, I would categorize, my forms and the form data to include the information so that I could sort them and filter them and group them based upon the information that was available.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. We had another question on reporting. Can you get reports just on the data that's in the BIM module? I'll let you take a stab at it, and then I'll try to answer.
Yeah. So for right now, basically this is kind of our first iteration, which is basically collecting all that data and pulling that into the system. We've got quite a few enhancements for our third quarter release that include some additional reporting capabilities to basically group and filter and sort the data coming out of the model, the individual object data, and we'll go ahead and show you that a little bit coming up in Q3. But for now, really, it was about capturing the data, allowing you to browse through it and view it, and we're working on the output for next quarter.
Right. I mean, and I will say, the viewpoints are stored as documents in the document module, and there are reporting capabilities around that, including if it's a graphics file, there's a way to sort of thumbnail the graphics in a report as well. So it would, if you're talking about it specifically the viewpoints, you have that capability. Had a few questions around file sizes and file size limitations. Could you talk a little bit about just that in general, and then I might maybe ask a couple of specific questions, Russ?
Yeah, as far as file size limitations, it really comes down to, it's hard to narrow down for a particular file. For instance, a Revit file is kind of bloated, has a lot of information in it that is beyond just the geometry and properties. So you can have a quite large file, and when you boil it down to just the geometry and properties, it's actually not that much data. So for us, it's more about complexity. As far as eBuilder is concerned, it can consume any sort of file. The only difference will be basically, how long you want it to load. For us, I mean, the practical application that we recommend for users is to break things up by logical pieces. So, if you're working on a tower, break it up by, break up your model by floor. Just from a logical standpoint, and kind of the same rules that would apply when you're working in like model coordination. If you have the choice of sending around, a very large file that's got all 10 floors of your building in it, but you're only working on coordinating one floor at a time, it makes more sense to split that up by floor. rather than moving around that large file every time. The same thing holds true for inside of eBuilder. I would say break your model up by floors. You would then set up a model set per floor, and then basically that'll make it easier to navigate around. There's also other practical applications. Again, we're trying to make the model available to novice users that aren't familiar with navigating around the model. And from that standpoint, if you want to set those users up for success, you probably want to make it as simple as possible as well. So, a floor at a time seems to be, a digestible chunk for a novice user to be able to get in and navigate around the model, whereas something larger might be a little bit more overwhelming.
Right. And we've had, that's good. That answered most of them. We did have, so just to reiterate what you said, there's no limit from a document standpoint. Like we don't price our software based on how much storage you're using or how many projects or how many models you have in the system. We've had a couple of questions around editing the model or adding additional attributes to the model itself. And one question was, sorry, I just lost my place momentarily here. Can you add, can asset tags be added to components of the model, for example? Could you talk about that a bit?
Sure. So right now, again, we talked about kind of bringing the data in and consuming it first. So right now, all the editing will happen through your modeling platform, whether that's coming out of AutoCAD, Revit, or other platform that you've exported to IFC and brought into the system. So right now, it's just viewing. We have plans on our roadmap down the road to be able to add additional properties or add custom fields to objects as well, and be able to update those properties. But that's down the road a ways still. Right now, it would be if you wanted to add those properties. If you wanted to add serial numbers or something like that to a piece of equipment, you would add it in the authoring platform, and then bring that new version of the if that was Revit, you would add those to your Revit model, bring those in, and then everybody, the consumers that are using the viewer, would be able to see that new data, but there's no editing capabilities right now.
Right. Another question. So we have an audience member who currently uses Navisworks as a method to allow non-Revit users to browse and navigate models and do class detection and all that kind of thing. So the difference here is that the question is, how would this differ other than the direct tie into forms and processes of eBuilder?
Well, I mean, that's the big key there, is really being able to have that integrated platform and integrated link. So in the case, you could use kind of a similar workflow with Navis. Obviously, you would dump your viewpoints out to images, and you'd be managing your workflow based upon images at that point, which is okay as a first step, but really from a project management standpoint, really being able to jump in directly from my processes, my forms, my equipment tab, all the other faculties inside of eBuilder is really the key differentiator.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's it. And it could be any whether it's design review or some kind of construction administration process that you're running. If you've got it in eBuilder from the kind of just pure business process standpoint, then that is exactly the advantage, is that you can then tie that into the specific viewpoints that you've created in the model.
And arguably you could say there's a lot of stuff going on in Navis that timeliner stuff and extra tools and capabilities that are great for a power user, but are probably just a little bit of noise for an average user off the street. So again, trying to keep things simple for those users that don't have a lot of experience with model viewing capabilities.
Yep. And we have time for a couple more questions, I think. We have a lot. I can tell everybody now we're probably not going to get to everybody, but keep them coming in. I'm going to try to get to as many as you can. Next question is, Nice 3D model! Exclamation point. Can I also navigate a 2D BIM view?
So the 2D is actually going to be handled actually through eBuilder Documents module. We actually have a viewing capability. It's actually a viewer called Brava that includes not only just CAD files, but all sorts of other document viewing from images and PDFs and so on and so forth. That's basically how you would manage your 2D documents. The viewer is basically just going to pull in the 3D information.
Yep. Thank you. We've had a couple of questions from, I assume, existing eBuilder customers around, is this included in my subscription? How much does it cost? That kind of thing. We'll definitely put you in touch with your account manager to discuss this. But it's not if you have an enterprise subscription to eBuilder, it is included in your enterprise subscription. Beyond that, it's a question of user licenses and permissions, essentially.
Yeah, this is definitely a paid-for module. So definitely the route for more information on that. Obviously, it's going to depend on the size of your account, that sort of thing. So definitely talk with your account manager. Any other questions there, Richard?
Yeah, so one which you kind of touched on about, I think you touched on when we spoke about the 2D model. Is it possible to sort of redline and make comments on the model as it is today?
Yeah, so that actually also happens. As I noted, the viewpoints are stored in the documents module as JPEG files. That same viewer that's used to look at the 2D CAD as well as PDFs and all your image files also has markup capabilities. So you would actually do your markups on the 2D sheet rather than doing them in 3D. But essentially you end up with kind of the same results. All the markups live with the saved viewpoint in the documents module, and you can access them all from there. Or as the attachment of the viewpoint. You can see them in either light.
All right. Okay, I think that is everything we're going to get to today, so I'm going to hand back to Maggie at this point. Thanks, Russ.
Sure.
All right. Thank you, Russ. Thank you, Richard. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. Like I said, we're going to send the recording out to all of you in the next few days, so keep an eye out for that. And if you want to stay current on some of the webinars that we're going to be hosting coming up, if you go to our webpage, e-builder.net, and click on events, we have all of our upcoming events and webinars there that you can register for. So thanks again, and have a great day, everyone.